Neighboring 101. This is the class where we meet monthly and we talk with some of the leaders in the neighboring movement around the nation, and we discover ways for organizations and individuals to use the idea of neighboring to improve their community or for personal development. And so first, let's just begin with a little advice for my neighborhood. I just finished reading this book called The Simplest Way to Change the World. And the authors in that book make the point that there are four basic reasons why Americans no longer neighbor. And those four reasons that they listed are loneliness, busyness, a retreat mentality, and an entertainment focus. Let me tell you about each of those just briefly. One, we do have kind of an epidemic of loneliness in America. And when you are lonely, you actually don't feel like going out and meeting your neighbors and interacting with those around you. So that's one factor. A second factor is busyness. Wow, Americans love to tell people how busy we are, don't we? I mean, it's practically, hello, my name's David. Boy, I'm busy. It's like the second thing you say. And because we're so busy schedules don't allow for margin for you to meet and interact with your neighbors. The third factor they identified was this retreat mentality. You sometimes hear people say this, I just want to go home and relax. So the whole idea is to go home and get away from people. But really, if your home is your fortress of solitude, that's not a healthy way to be living. And then the fourth factor is that entertainment focus. You know, we buy larger televisions, we hook them to the internet, and we entertain ourselves until we fall asleep. On average, Americans watch 3.1 hours of television per night. So no wonder we don't have time for our neighbors, right? So the answer to all four of these factors rests with us, though, us and our individual choices. By ignoring our neighbors, we're giving up a lot of social capital. We're putting our physical and mental health at risk, along with the health of our community and our nation. So it's time to start taking some steps on our own to improve our neighboring interaction. We need to be intentional about being outside, watch and speak to neighbors who we see out, and take steps to learn our neighbors' names and use those names. So that's the starting line. So on your mark, get set, let's go. All right, our guest speaker today is Amber Allen. Amber's a coworker of mine. She is a human development specialist with the University of Missouri Extension. She's been with the University of Missouri for 2 years, I believe, but even before joining the university, she had a wealth of community and social work under her belt. And I'm just here to say that Amber is a tremendous asset. She does great programming, lots of it, and her peers recognized her this year by voting her in as the Rookie of the Year in the state of Missouri for MU Extension. And it's sort of an acknowledgement of the great work that she is doing. I know she's put at least a year of work, research, and reading into this topic. So without further ado, I'm just going to hand it over to Amber. Thank you for joining us and doing this, Amber.
Well, thank you for having me. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Like David said, I'm Amber Allen. I'm a Human Development and Family Science Field Specialist with the University of Missouri Extension. I also want to point out something else David said. This is a year's worth of work that I've been researching, and I'm trying to get the content in about 45 minutes. So know there's more content than I'm giving today. So if it sounds like there's kind of those like ellipses at the end, like ... there could be more. It's because there is. So I just wanted to be transparent about that today. So if there's questions afterwards, feel free to reach out to me and continue to learn more research about sowing and growing hope. So today we're going to talk about harvesting hope. And this program was developed through a lot of research and a lot of reading. Some key researchers that were used were Dr. C.R. Snyder, Dr. Shane Lopez, who were kind of founding hope researchers, and the book Hope Rising by Chan Hellman and Casey Gwynn, which I know David had sent out as some reading if you were interested. And there's also various other articles I incorporated about hope, because there's actually nearly been 2,000 published studies related to hope throughout this past decade. It's something we don't always think about, but there's actually quite a bit of research related to hope. So today, as we're going to do this, I'm going to connect it as neighbors, we're community builders and fostering hope. So think about, why is this connection important to hope as we're neighbors? And one of those is because one of the biggest challenges of being a community builder is our hope is sometimes at a spectrum. We sometimes have wavering hope in situations when we're trying to do new things, or we come up with a challenge or barrier. So for a moment, hope is actually measurable, it's quantifiable. There's actually a hope scale out there that I'll have David send out after this class. But for time's sake, I want you to imagine a scale rated 1 to 10. 10 saying, I have the highest hope I've ever had right now. And 1 being, it's really hard to be hopeful right now. Maybe there's things going in your life. Maybe there's things going on in your neighborhood. And you don't have to put this in chat, but I want you to really reflect right now and see where your own hope is at this moment. Where would you rate your hope? Now, after you figured out that number, I want you to think, how would you rate the hope of your neighborhood, of your neighbors around you? Now, this is based on what we see, what we know, but how we feel about our own hope can sometimes reflect in how we see things around us as well. But we need to know as we move forward, hope is not just simply emotion. A lot of times we just connect it as an emotion. It's more than a feeling. It's something about being intentional, that it's measurable element, and there's actually different components to overall hope. So what will we be learning today? We'll be talking about demonstrating knowledge on how to measure hope, talk about 3 different concepts in defining hope, but I actually added 3 more since we're talking about neighboring that actually can be connected to hope, and understand how hope plays a role in our lives and how we can create a culture of hope for ourselves, but also for the neighborhoods that we live and work in. So first thing we need to know is, what is hope? So if you have your phone on you or put the slide in, I'm going to attempt to share a Slido that cooperates with me today. There's a QR code on there. And I just want you to put, if you could put 1 word that you associate with hope, and you can give more than 1 answer, what is hope when you hear the word hope? So you can either go to slido.com and put in that 672 code, or go with your phone on the QR code on, to my left, it might be on your right, in your computer, and just start typing in. If my computer cooperates, we should start seeing a word cloud forming. Yep, there we go, it's working. Joy for the future. So either use that QR code or slido.com, because this activity right now will show, kind of give us an idea where we all see hope, or what hope is, from our own journey and our own perception of hope. So what is hope? I love seeing all the different comments come in of what is hope. I've taught it a few times this year with different groups on specific subject areas. And so I love seeing the different things come in. We're seeing a lot of the word positive, happiness, a lot of faith component to it, joy. A feeling of expectation, internal joy. We'll let a few more come in, but I do want to desire a few key things that you'll see kind of repeat itself is we're going to talk a lot about the future today when we talk about hope, because that's a key component of hope. Desire, happiness, internal joy, all of these are words that we can associate hope, that when we hear hope, that we've either said or talked about. And I just want you to look and say, oh, maybe you saw one that came up and said, oh, that's also how I think about hope. Or, oh, I've never thought of hope that way. Because when we start having a discussion about hope with others or trying to give hope to others or hope to our neighborhood, we need to know where others come from in their perception of hope. And I'll give a real honest answer. I did this presentation with youth over the weekend, and they're a lot more honest. Well, not all the time, but they give you some answers that adults may not give. And some of them put, I have no hope right now. There is no hope. Apathy. They actually gave opposites of hope in that moment because of where they were on the hope scale. So no, I point that out because all of these are very positive. I point that out that if you come in contact with someone who might be in lower hope than you, they might still be hopeful, but you might hear some more of those negative, what we conceive as negative connotations when it comes to hope. Well, thank you all for doing this activity. I'm always excited when it actually the screen decides to work with me, because sometimes that is not always the case. So that is a win for today. Well, see, I'm being hopeful about hope right now and the word cloud. So the definition we're going to use today, using some of those terms we saw today, is hope is a belief that your future can be brighter. So that futuristic thinking. So looking into the future and better than your past, and that you actually have a role to play in making it better. So a very distinct attribute to hope than some different things that we might use as synonyms. For example, sometimes we use the word wish. Wish and hope are actually two different things, because when we wish for something, we don't actually always have control in making that wish or making it better. But hope, we have that control in playing a role in making it better. Because hope is about intention. Remember, hope is measurable. So I want you to think about this quote and go back to that hope scale and how this applies to your life. And there's one more attribute that I do want to connect to hope, but talk about how it's different, because I saw a lot of words like positivity, which if you are hopeful, you can be positive, but there is a distinct difference between hope and optimism. Optimism is more of an emotion, and it's more about less personal control and more that positive outlook, where hope has kind of more of a realistic, you might be realistic, but you're still hopeful. Like, I like to hike. I am hopeful that I can do a 5-mile hike. But if I was optimistic, I could say I can do a 20-mile hike. Hope would tell me, realistically, Amber, you can do a 5-mile hike and you have the future to get to that 5-mile hike and you can play a role in it, but it pulls me a little back from the 20-mile hike my optimistic self might tell me I can do. So thinking about that when we're thinking about neighboring and some of the plans we might come up with, we might come with some great plans on how it would look, but also having that realistic of what can I buy, what can I do, and what roles do I have in the future. Looks like I might have some questions in the chat. Okay. Oh, no, but feel free to put those questions in the chat as well.
Supporting comments, but no questions yet.
Okay, perfect. So psychologist Rick Snyder, who's one of the founding researchers of hope, focused on the interaction of 3 concepts in defining hope: goals, pathways, and agency, which we also can call willpower. So I want to look at this as an individual level first, and then we'll get to those words on the side that kind of bring it into that neighboring aspect as well. So we're going to work backwards in defining hope. The end goal when we're defining hope is those goals. So goals can be short or long-term. So I want you to think for a second, what are some short-term goals that you have for yourself? It might be just getting through your to-do list by Friday that you had for this week. Not a long-term goal of someday having a blank to-do list, because that might be that optimism talking again. So think of a short-term goal that you have. So in the next week, in the next month. Now we did one for yourself. I want you to think of a short-term goal. Yes, Christmas shopping is a big one. Yes. So now I want you to think of a short-term goal that you have for your neighborhood or for neighboring. Why are you in this class? What's a short-term goal that you have from attending this class? Maybe not specifically mine, but this whole series. So the key to a goal is you must have enough desire and motivation to motivate you to an action. So this is when hope becomes actionable, when you start working on that goal. And goals connect to our beliefs about ourselves and others. So thinking about how those goals can play an aspect into your hope. But how do we get to those goals? So going back to that left side, one is pathways. Research shows that hopeful people can easily identify pathways that will likely lead to their goals. So have you ever been at really high hope and been able to see 5, 10, 15 ways to get to a place? And maybe you see a barrier coming, and that's okay. You can see barriers and still be hopeful, but seeing how to get around those barriers are key. But when you're at a lower hope, you might see less pathways or no pathways at all. So the more hopeful you are, you can identify multiple pathways. And then you have willpower, so that motivational aspect of hope. These can be internal motivation, helping you get there, but also with that, having those cheerleaders or supports around you to have that willpower. To have increased hope, you need both pathways and agencies required to hope. Have you seen these 3 elements in yourself or others in your neighborhood? You can put in the chat yes or no. It's okay. No can be an answer. Or yes, have you seen these aspects play out? And now that you're seeing them, say, oh yeah, that person that I've seen these 3 elements in has been a really hopeful person.
What if we're thinking we're not sure we've seen all 3 of these in any neighbor?
That's okay. I'm going to show you how to look at this, maybe how to increase this as we get more into slides. This is more just to get us to start thinking about it. Because when we think about neighboring, those 3 words on the right side are where that's going to come in to play on helping us look for hope and increase hope in our neighborhood. The worth. What is the value of the actual for both you and the individual and others? How much are you connecting with that individual to understand what they're hopeful in? Going back to what you were saying earlier about having the society, if we watch a lot of TV or we're too busy, perhaps they're putting their worth in their busyness and not focusing on their worth as being an engaged neighbor or a community member. But finding out what they see worthy of or worth of to help connect to their hope. The next principle is openness. Openness makes us be transparent, have honesty about our limitations, going back to that willpower, and makes us open to new ideas. So having openness with our neighbors about hope and maybe what barriers or pathways we're having issues with. And then the final one, and this one is key, connection. Our most cherished hopes are pointless outside of the community. So having that connection means that there's commitment and you're doing this together, and there's a overall hope goal for your neighborhood. So having that connection to each other, and I know David talks about this a lot, but having connection will be able to have that intertwine of hope. I call it hope gives hope. And we'll talk about that here later, but having that connection helps give that hope to others because they know you're a hopeful person, they know what brings you hope, and so forth. So I said I would show you how these goals, agency, and willpower play together. So I'm going to have you look at it in this next video. Communication is key, yes. Some of you may have seen this video. It's from America's Got Talent of Nightbird. I like to disclose she is an individual who is living with cancer, but you'll hear a little more about her story. I've watched this a million times. I shed a tear every time I teach this class. So emotions are okay. Hope does bring us emotions because it's being vulnerable and talking about something we don't always talk about. But while you're watching this video, I want you to think, where was the willpower? Did you see it her and the judges? What path? Okay, so everyone can take a deep breath.
Way to go, Amber. Now I'm crying too.
I know every time, especially I've seen this at least 100 times at this point. I saw it the night it went viral. I was working on this and I got added into my presentation. It has a lot of emotions, but where do we see the hope in this video?
Others can unmute and join in, or you can type in the chat, either one, but please unmute yourself and join in the conversation.
When she said, I've got 2%, but it's not 0.
Yep. That hope, she had that willpower, that motivation, those pathways we saw. Who else?
Amber, even at the beginning when she said, I'm more than the bad things that have happened to me. Mm-hmm. Even that was a statement of hope.
Yeah, the statement of hope, that futuristic thinking, you know, she knew those things had happened. She had those barriers in her life, but she found those pathways. She found a pathway to get to America's Got Talent, even with all those barriers. And that shows hope in itself. I don't know if you caught this, but she said, I came here by myself. Someone in the chat said she was taking actionable steps to use her talent. Yep, taking those goals, those small steps. Do you see her hope change at any point throughout that, even within her song lyrics?
The first two stanzas were a little more negative. The third stanza showed a change, a little more positive change there.
You saw that hope spectrum or that hope continuum. You know, she had gone through a lot in the last year. Someone in the chat said, I can't stop crying. Happens to me every time. Completely a normal reaction to this video. Because hope has emotion. Even though it's measurable and actionable, it does have emotion attached to it. And we'll talk about that here in a minute when we go through stages, if maybe we're not feeling as hopeful, of what that may look like when it comes to emotion. So feel free to keep putting things in the chat about discussion about the video, because I know with time, we don't have a lot of time to debrief, but I know this video needs debriefing. So feel free to put other comments in the chat as needed, because she does show a lot of hope, but there was a lot to her story as well. Because hope affects a lot of who we are. It affects all our dimensions of health, our personal goals, our relational goals, our professional goals, and other goals can actually help increase our hope score. But remember, hope can be learned. So maybe you know someone that, or yourself that feels, you know, I don't actually know how hope works. I don't feel very hopeful. Hope can be learned. So I've listed 4 dimensions that research has done a lot of research in of how hope can affect it. But no, these are not all the dimensions of your life that hope can affect. And each of these dimensions that I mentioned play an effect on that overall hope scale or hope score that you would give. Hold on, there's some more coming in the chat and I cannot talk and read at the same time. I love that she said you can't wait until life isn't hard to be happy. Yes, we never know how we are going to react when or if we see that kind of diagnosis. I hope that I would be that hopeful if it were me. Yes, we don't know how we'll react to any of those type of diagnoses or any type of life situation that we might encounter in a journey. I will say, I'll get this on another slide, but I'll talk about it now. There is a point when we get in those type of situations that's called the survival window that we're not going to be able to think about hope for a few minutes, days, months. We're going to be in that survival window of trying to figure out just what's happening with us. But the goal is that we have enough hope build up that when we start to go back to that resiliency and moving back forward to who we want to become, that hope comes through after we're through that survival window. Yes, she is an inspiration for all of us. She really is. So these 4 components, the first being well-being, there's been research study that's shown connection with hope and your overall well-being. So in a published study of hope, hope has been one of the key factors and predictor of well-being, especially in trauma recovery. So hope playing a key role in that trauma recovery. It also has been shown to buffer the effects of adversity and stress. And Snyder's hope theory assumed that hope leads to higher levels of subjective well-being when we experience success in pursuing our goals. People who are more hopeful are more creative and show more perseverance in pursuing their goals, which in turn results in higher levels of happiness by gaining more successful experiences. In the book Hope Rising, they give an example of Snyder, I think was Good Morning America. He had everyone do the hope score beforehand. And then he did an experiment where overall well-being, they each had to put their hand, I think, in a tub of ice. And he had pegged which one would go the longest based on their overall hope score because of their subjective well-being. Yes, she was taken to how she pulled the judges along with her journey of hope. Yes, and her overall, and that shows with that well-being, how that can look. The next is education. Hope can be a predictor of academic achievement from elementary school age children through graduate school. So there's actually a children's hope scale as well. It only is started at kindergarten and above because that's where the research has been at. Doesn't mean it can't be applied to those younger ages. The research just hasn't been done. In those younger ages, it's been done at the elementary, middle school, and high school age. And higher the hope of a child, the higher the daily attendance rate, the higher overall better test scores. And one recent study actually found that hope is a better predictor of college grade point average than traditional placement tests and high school grade point averages. Hope has also predicts students' retention and college graduation rates. So there's a lot of research right now in hope and college students. A lot of that hope was, not a lot of hope, a lot of the research had started pre-COVID. So I don't know what effects COVID will have on that research or how that will look. That's a question I have when reading this research is, will this research change or shift a little bit when it comes to education now that a pandemic has intertwined with the research as well. But more to come on that when they release that research. The next is work. There is newer research done connection of hope, and it's important to the workplace. So hopeful employees tend to set more goals, and they tend to be more complex goals. And hopeful employees are more energetic in pursuing those goals. And hope has actually been a source of producing lower burnout as well, and lower turnover. So Shane Lopez, who I mentioned earlier, her research was a lot about hope in the workplace, found that employees with lower hope, given the same amount of work in a day as an employee with higher hope, will take longer to do the same amount of work. So productivity changes with our hope level as well. And we can think about ourselves. We've all had those days that we felt like we've had lower hope than higher hope. And we probably noticed maybe our work or home life, we may have not put as much productivity in it. And then the last is health. Hope and health has been studied for many decades. This is kind of where hope research kind of started, was that hope and health combination. And most of the research shows when hope is high, patients respond better to treatment, are more likely to engage in prevention strategies and preventative health care, and are more likely to comply with healthcare providers' recommendations. So that is just some of the research that is out there. Like I said, there's thousands and thousands of articles, and there are other life domains that we didn't check right now, like personal relationships, our social relationships, our mental health, our spirituality, health, finances playing a role on how our hope score is. But know all of these play an aspect on that overall hope score when you're asked those questions about pathways and agency as well. So I'm just going to hit very lightly on this page because to talk about hope, you need to know what hope doesn't look like when someone is going away from hope. And there's 3 different levels. The first is rage. And this is when you can't get to your desired goal. And people tend to react in anger, frustration. But think about rage is the closest emotion to hope. Thinking about that, when someone starts to get frustrated, their goals aren't being met. And then it's followed by despair, when they can't find a viable alternative or pathway. And then the last stage, the opposite, hopelessness, is actually apathy, that final stage. So there's no agency, there's no willpower, and there's an absence of motivation or goal-focused energy. People don't have to stay in these stages. Us as cheerleaders or support individuals or individuals giving hope can help people move back out into hope as well. So now that we know hope comes in a continuum, I'm going to talk about steps in nurturing and growing hope in our lives. So the first is goal setting. To nurture hope, there has to be a desire or goal that must be known in specific detail and exist, remember, hope is realistic, of possible attainment. So this, even coming up with goals, will increase that agency and allow for additional pathways to develop to get to that hope, that motivation. So once you have your goal, that very specific goal, maybe broken out even into smaller goals, we can become pathway focused. So find viable pathways to goal attainment. So looking at what those different pathways can be, what barriers we would have, what measurable benchmarks we might see. And I want you to write down, if you wrote that short-term goal earlier, write down some possible pathways that you have. And as we're thinking about those pathways, if you chose one of those pathways and you've identified it, we start to engage that willpower, those cheerleaders, our internal motivation. We can look at future memories. Start to create those future memories of what you want your life or your neighborhood to look like once that goal is achieved. So just writing down 3 future memories can help increase your hope and make it more achievable that your hope will increase because you're seeing what that end result can look like. And then stage 4, hope gives hope. If we're nurturing hope, both willpower and pathways, we can elevate and reflect hope in our daily lives. We'll see possibility of other goals and we'll start passing on hopes to others. I don't know if you've ever heard the analogy of filling your bucket of, compliments, filling your bucket with hope. Once your bucket's overflowing with hope, you can give hope to others and fill others' hope buckets. Whether that's doing something nice for your neighbor. When I did this with youth this weekend, they wrote hopeful statements on sticky notes to put on others' lockers. But what could you do in the neighborhood to give hope? Because what we're truly trying to do, and I know I'm short on time, is building a culture of hope. So I'm asking these 4 questions and you can put in the chat, but I really want you to focus on these for a moment. How can you build a culture of hope? What would happen if you lived in a culture of hope? And how could you incorporate hope daily in your neighborhood? And what are some activities you could create to promote hope in your neighborhood? And you can unmute your mic or put in the chat.
Those are great questions. I'm looking forward to everybody jumping in. chat or
Discussion
unmuting.
part's my favorite part, hearing other people's ideas and
Yeah, those are good
they're hopeful
questions.
for in their own neighborhood.
We'll wait here till we have a few. I love the whole idea of how goal setting leads to, the pathway focus, those steps that you take that ends up leading to hope. I love that idea. See, here I am grumbling about goal setting usually. So shame on me. I should be setting more goals.
Yep, see, increases overall hope, research shows, so it's good.
Yes, yes. So what do others online here think, especially this, how can you incorporate hope into your neighborhood? Or activities that would create to promote hope in your neighborhood. Love to hear some ideas on those. Anyone? I see Mary's on and Scott. Any thoughts on that?
Neighborhood cleanup. Thank you, Sylvia. Not only would that increase
On neighborhood activities in order to try to find a sense of community, which would in effect create hope among the residents.
You need to increase that overall hope, that socialization. Yep, hope for cleanup, pride in the community. We have hosted small gatherings of our block, of our house, just to introduce ourselves. That connection piece, help increase hope. We're working on a community garden. We also regularly host block parties to get people together. As always, we can create hope by example. Being upbeat is contagious. Yep. We gave an outside Cinco de Mayo party for neighborhoods, events for children at the park. Go out for my way to say hi when walking my dog. Yes. And animals can make us hopeful too. You can use your animals as connection pieces too. Not that I'm the person that waves at all the dogs in my neighborhood, but I am. It's fun to just come up with reasons to have people on the block get together. And I don't know if you've asked this, you might have asked this before, but when you're talking to your neighbors or having a neighborhood association meeting, do you ask, what are your goals for the neighborhood? What are you hopeful this neighborhood might have or wish you had? I think of some of the organizations and community things I've been involved with, not only in my own neighborhood, but within the communities, getting new parks set up or new playground equipment can really increase the overall hope. We have a Facebook group, Just Ask Our Small Town. Oh, coming in. Now they're coming in too fast for me to read. Small Town to ask for share or give items to each other. We have a neighborhood holiday light event. Neighbors enjoy decorating their homes, and we pick a day for people to walk the neighborhood and view the lights. We ask how we can make the block a better place to live together. Yeah. Just asking those questions can start that engagement. Christmas parade can start that engagement of hope. Hope gives hope. We don't need to necessarily label, hey, we're doing a hope gives hope activity in our neighborhood today. Now, I would love that because, I'm all about hope and hope research, but sometimes just starting that conversation and that connection to see what is the culture of hope in our neighborhood? What are people hoping will happen? How can we make that actionable? How can we make that a goal? How can we help them find those pathways and have that willpower to increase their hope? Because maybe there's multiple people in the neighborhood that really, I have a child, so I'm really on the playground, but maybe they really want a playground in their neighborhood, but maybe there's been years and years of trying to get this playground and they can't find the space for it, the greenway space, or they can't find a donation. And there've been a lot of barriers. So they've lost hope. They've not seen the pathways. They don't have the motivation and willpower anymore. But by being that hopeful person in your neighborhood, you're able to find those pathways, reestablish those pathways, be that cheerleader and give that willpower and come up with those steps and goals. And you're increasing your own hope, but in turn also increasing those neighbors' hope about having a playground. And in turn, increasing your overall neighborhood about hope. I felt like I needed a flow chart for what just came out of my mouth, but you get what I mean. It's steps. You have your hope bucket that got filled, then those neighbors who were about the playground filled, then you got your whole neighborhood filled, and you also filled some hope buckets of some children who now have a playground in the neighborhood as well. So you see how this is kind of a chain reaction of hope effect. Yes, these are all great examples. So I want you to think about it, because it sounds like you're already doing things to increase hope in your neighborhoods and in your communities. But I want you to think of it through a hope lens when you're doing these things in your neighborhood, because that can increase your hope as well, just looking through things through a hope lens, thinking, I'm building a culture of hope. I'm moving towards a culture of hope in my overall community, and I'm incorporating hope in my neighborhood. So in summary, just some reminders that we've already talked about, but remember that your attitude makes a difference. Hope is a state of mind. So we're cultivating a stance of hope and seeing the world in open-ended and full of potential. Hope involves trust. We're building trust with others when we're building hope. We're anticipating a positive future. Remember, hope is future-oriented. So we're looking towards that future. Hope is a habit. So practicing hope and making it a habit can increase our overall hope. It takes a community. We could be one very hopeful person and have really high hope ourselves, but until we're passing on hope to others, we need to remember one person can be hopeful, but to bring a hopeful community, we need to think about the future and collaborative efforts together. And we need to set the table for hope, looking for those possibilities, looking for those willpower pathways and agencies together, and those overall goals for our neighborhood. People pantry outside City Hall, so you can get food at any time. That is great, and leads me right into my quote. We want to give every person hope. We must give hope, always hope, a quote by Mother Teresa. And that's really what I want to do with this program, is give hope, every person hope, and always give hope. And like every good university program, there is an evaluation I have created. So we have the QR code here. I will also put the Qualtrics in the chat as well. See if that's going to work. You can either use the QR code, or I have put the link in chat as well. I would truly appreciate you giving your feedback. Like I said, I put 8 hours of content in about a 50-minute period. So there is more, but this is a newer thing I've been researching last year. So please give your feedback. Gives opportunity to improve this overall program. Are there any questions or comments?
Some others can certainly jump in here, Amber. I was encouraged to hear that hope can be learned. So I'm not in one fixed spot. I can always, I can improve in this area. Certainly we'll leave things open for others to comment or ask questions if you'd like to.
Welcome.
So some of what you were saying reminded me of something we're going to be focusing on a lot in 2022, which is asset-based community development. Several of our speakers in the year will be focused on that. And one of the principles of asset-based community development is always looking at the assets or the positive things in your neighborhood or community and focus on those. We're so geared, it seems like, to always spot the negative or spot the problems. It's like our main muscle memory is, that's what we're most skilled at. But this idea of looking at assets and focusing on the positive in the community and working to improve that, build on those areas, it seems like that fits a little bit with this hope theme and what you're sharing here. It's sort of that responding to the things that are maybe going well and positive and moving
Yeah.
forward already. It seems like there's a correlation.
Yes. So a lot of the hope research I've looked at has been in well-being and health, being a human development major, but the asset building, hope is closely linked to resiliency and protective factors, and really looking at those positive sides of human development. But I see that could be completely crossed over to the developmental, or not developmental assets, but asset-based community building as well, looking at those positives of what you have in your community and looking at that first, because like you said, we're wired to look at the negative or have those negative thoughts before anything else. So yes, I think they are closely linked, David.
Interesting. So you're a great segue into these other future speakers and programs, and a great topic here. A few comments here coming in. The importance of hope, not just within, but reaching out to others for support. It's a good reminder. I'll be looking more at the role of hope in community development activities. Oh yeah, this is from the quote from the young lady that's saying we need to always remember that a 2% chance is not zero.
Yes.
Love that. And yes, when we show hope, it's such a powerful encouragement for others. Several people have mentioned that 2% quote from the singer. So appreciate those comments in chat as well. Well, Amber, thank you for sharing today. Did you have anything else to wrap up? Or there's your contact information if people want to follow up with you. And we do want to encourage them to take that poll that was listed in chat, and we'll send out with the video as well. Just a reminder that we do have a session in December, and you're not going to want to miss it. It is Mike Mather. He's the author of Having Nothing, Possessing Everything. Asset-based community development is certainly his focus. He is highly sought after speaker and lecturer and a pastor at a Methodist church now in Colorado. And I think I just caught him on a weak moment. He had just moved from Indianapolis to Colorado, and life hadn't got busy yet. At least that's my assumption. And he readily said yes to speaking to our class live, and specifically about the book Having Nothing, Possessing Everything, which is, like I said, is 100% focused on implementing asset-based community development. He has a fascinating story, some fascinating examples. I would encourage you to read the book. Many of you may have already read this book. There's a lot of them in print, but if not, maybe read ahead of time and then be here December 16th, ready to hear from Mike Mather. And then we have some great speakers already lined up for next year as well. So if there's nothing else, that's the end of today's session. Glad you could join us, and look forward to seeing you again on future sessions of Neighboring 101.